Welcome to Get Rich Education. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. When you buy property, often you put 20% down. Well, then 80% is tied to your cost of money, which is your interest rate. We're talking about refinancing and interest rates. Then a Get Rich Education listener like you joins me on the show today on Get Rich Education. Finally, with Total Control Financial, get checkbook control of your existing 401k and IRA funds to invest in real estate. Yes, you can move your retirement money into your own checking account, but you must avoid the little-known tax that you'll get hammered with in a self-directed IRA. Instead, start your QRP. Learn more and get your free copy of the QRP book by text messaging QRP in all capital letters to 72,000. The company that's provided our listeners with more loans than anyone is Ridge Lending Group, NMLS 42056. You can finance more than 10 single families up to fourplexes. Serving most U.S. states, their knowledge and experience leads to your financial freedom. They're number one in the investment space. Pre-qualify and then chat with President Chaley Ridge personally. Start on your next investment property loan right now at ridgelendinggroup.com.
You're listening to the show that has created more financial freedom than nearly any show in the world. This is Get Rich Education.
Welcome to Get Rich Education. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. One thing that Get Rich Education is that it's not get rich quick. It never has been. Well, then what's the point? Well, the point is that you can slowly and sustainably build wealth over time, and most people don't ever build any real wealth at all. Later today is where we're going to talk to a Get Rich Education listener just like you. He lives in San Diego, California, and he's going to discuss how he's benefited from being a listener. First, let's talk about an easy way to not just put more money in your pocket, but it's something even better than putting more money in your pocket today, and that is increasing your monthly cash flow. Yes, that means putting more money in your pocket month after month after month with subtle moves that you can make now, and that is by refinancing your existing loans. And I think that the timing is right for refinancing if you haven't already done it, because the Fed has lowered interest rates 3 times this year, and a couple weeks ago, they indicated that they're going to slow down with more rate cuts. Well, here's the great thing about real estate when it comes to refinancing. See, if you bought a property at, say, a 6% interest rate, and then rates go up to 7 or 8%, well, then you have the option of just staying put and holding on to that comparatively lower 6% rate. But oppositely, if you bought property at a 6% interest rate and then rates go down to, say, 4.75%, well, then you can renegotiate the deal and get that lower rate. When you refinance from 6% down to 4.75%, your new lender pays off your old lender. So as long as you've bought property, you're the one that's in control, and now you're really able to play both sides of this. If you buy and rates go up, you'll hold your loan and enjoy what is now a comparatively low rate to what all new buyers are getting. And oppositely, if you buy and rates go down, it is completely fair to exploit that situation and get a lower rate. That is what instantly puts more cash flow into your pocket every month. And now maybe you're wondering how much that would increase your cash flow if your rate goes from 6% down to 4.75%. Well, for every $100,000 loan that you refinance with that spread, you increase your cash flow by $78 per month. So for every $1 million refinanced, that's $780 of increased monthly cash flow. Now, of course, that's not all. Other than increasing your cash flow, you might be able to pull cash out with the refinance and increase your velocity of money and cash flow and leverage all at the same time. And of course, that new cash out is also going to have that lower rate, call it 4.75% today. I'm talking about today's income property rates here. Of course, you can get a rate about 1% lower than this yet if you're thinking about your primary residence. It's not just today's low interest rates that make refinancing look attractive to you. It's the fact that we've had moderate property price appreciation for quite a few years now, and that could make this an optimum time to look at getting your accumulated equity to work for you somewhere else. And look, I'm in this situation myself. As an active income property buyer, I bought some properties last year and rates just happened to be higher than 6% on income properties. And that ended up just being about as high as they did climb. And now I'm looking at refinancing them at today's lower rates. And I'm also making new buys today at the lower rates. And as far as those ones I bought last year at that higher 6% rate, see, I'm the one in the driver's seat. I can refinance those at today's lower rate too. Now, in some cases, if you want the lower interest rate, it is possible, just possible, that you can get a lower rate without having to do the documentation of a refinance. Maybe you can renegotiate your interest rate with your lender and get a non-refinance interest rate reduction. That's right, I said a non-refinance interest rate reduction. Now, this can depend on whether or not your lender has held your loan as a portfolio loan or not. Because see, the lender knows if you refinance your loan, you are just out, you are gone. You could probably go to any number of lenders through a mortgage broker. That's your current lien holder's customer retention strategy. Rather than losing you, they might just lower your rate for you without a refinance. But that will not help you get cash out, okay? If you want to get cash out, then you've got to do a refinance. When you remove equity from your own home and your rental property, you can actually reduce your risk. As we've discussed elsewhere before, you're less of a target for creditors, you've increased your leverage, and you have the benefit of spreading your equity into multiple geographic markets for diversification. And like I've said before, when you break equity off from one property and put it into another, you didn't lose any equity. You still have the same amount of equity. Your equity was merely harvested and transferred, and you've increased your leverage position and hopefully your cash flow too. One listener, Jonathan, said that refinancing has improved his monthly cash flow from $1,650 a month up to $2,150 a month from doing this. So I think that a big takeaway, if you're on the sidelines, is to just get property. And when you have property, now you're the one in control. You've got the option to renegotiate and refinance should rates go lower. Keep in mind that this strategy works better for rental single-family homes, duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes. It doesn't work so well on 5+ unit apartment buildings because those loans are often subject to prepayment penalties. So you're locked in on those. But on 1 to 4 unit properties, there is no prepayment penalty for early refinancing, and you remain flexible. Keep your options open. Now, if you think that mortgage rates are going to stay in this ultra low range for a while, I would say that that really is the consensus among people. A lot of people think that, but all you do know is that you really don't know. Remember last year, everyone believed that the Fed was going to raise rates in 2019? And what really happened was just the opposite. They lowered them 3 times. So let's keep history in mind here. You don't know where rates or markets are going. Even the world's most elite experts are wrong sometimes. So what is the one thing that you do know? It's that they're really low now, hearkening back to the power of now and what you can do now. Your investments and what affect them, they're really like this set of concentric rings, and you are the one person inside that innermost ring. The outermost ring or ripple, that's something that you can't control and also has really little effect on you. For example, last month, Christine Lagarde became the new European Central Bank president, replacing Mario Draghi and starting her new 8-year term. And if you're in the United States or Canada, well, you're pretty well insulated from a movement like that. Maybe one ring closer to you is that, say the Fed lowers interest rates 0.25%. Well, that affects home equity line of credit rates directly and only has an indirect effect on your long-term mortgage rates. So that's one of the concentric rings of, we'll say, a middle distance to you. And what is in the ring closest to you and your investments? Those are things like, well, your tenant just gave 30 days notice that they're moving, and what are you going to do now? Or that the combination of equity buildup and low mortgage interest rates has made today ripe for cash out refinancing. See, that's something that you can initiate today, and it's something that you can control. That's that inner investor ring of yours closest to you. Now, when interest rates go lower than the real rate of inflation, you're now effectively getting paid to borrow money. Yes, your prosperity increases when the purchasing power of the dollar erodes faster than your cost of money. Well, what happens next? If interest rates got so low that they became negative, like they have in some areas of the world, like Europe and Japan, NIRP, NIRP, negative interest rate policy is what we're talking about here. Now, to help you understand how negative interest rate policy would affect you, I made a short video about it. We'll just play the audio from my video here, and don't be startled by the sound effects in the video. The video is less than 4 minutes in length, and then I'll come back to comment. When you first heard about negative interest rates, you might have had a hard time wrapping your head around the concept. In the normal world, when you take out a loan, you need to pay interest on it. You're basically renting the use of someone else's money. And in the world that you've always known, inflation aside, interest means then that it costs you to borrow and rewards you to save. Well, under negative interest rates, when you're the borrower, you're actually making money. Say the rate is minus 1%. Then when you borrow $100, after 1 year, you'd only owe back $99 to the bank. Oppositely, the saver is losing money. If you put $1,000 into a savings account, after 1 year, you'll only have a balance of $990 back. Now, why would anyone save in a negative interest rate environment then? Well, most wouldn't, but as counterintuitive as it seems, a small group of people might say that they're paying for the security of keeping their money in the bank, much like perhaps a person that pays rent on a bank safe deposit box would. Perhaps only the most bearish or risk-averse subset of people would ever do that. Because to growth-minded investors, probably you, then negative interest rates mean that you're paying the bank just so that they get the privilege of using your money. What negative interest rates do is discourage you from holding money in savings accounts, and instead it gives you a strong incentive to borrow and spend your cash. Now, why would governments even care? Why would they implement negative interest rates like this? Well, this would reduce saving. It would therefore increase spending and investing and lending, and that gets us to spend more money. We increase, therefore, economic activity, because by borrowing, you could say then more easily start your own business or buy a piece of real estate or spend your money on products and services in other people's businesses. It pulls future consumption back here into the present day. Now, most nations still don't have negative interest rates. One danger of implementing them in the US, where the economy is still fairly good, is that if we get into a Great Recession type of event again, this negative interest rate tool would largely be used up already. Negative interest rates could create an asset bubble as more people borrow and spend, and it could be seen to make housing unaffordable. It could be unaffordable to buy a home when asset prices are pushed up. The United States has never had negative interest rates, but it's already been implemented in Europe and in Japan. Now, would negative interest rates really impact you at the consumer level? Maybe not, but we've already seen Denmark offer a minus 0.5% mortgage, meaning that you could buy a house and pay back less than you borrowed. And if negative interest rates ever hit you, really the least that you need to know is that savers are punished and borrowers and spenders are the ones that are rewarded. So there it is, negative interest rate policy. Remember earlier this year on the show, economist Jim Rickards told us why negative interest rates don't work in places where they've tried and have failed, like Japan. Also earlier this year on the show, economist Richard Duncan told us that he doesn't think negative rates are coming to the United States anytime soon, maybe never. But of course, they still could, so it's helpful for you to know how that could look. It really flips your world of spending and borrowing that you've always known completely upside down. Every once in a while, we have a regular Get Rich Education listener like you come onto the show, so you can tell us how this show has changed your life. We're going to do that today for just a few minutes. Please be mindful that these guests are not any sort of professional speakers. They're often working at a day job and commuting and learning how they can do more with less and make more of themselves for their family. They are not New York Times bestselling authors or event keynote speakers, and you've got to appreciate that about them, that they've gotten out of their comfort zone and come onto the show. So that's why I admire Get Rich Education listener Andrew Stanton for coming onto the show today. The value for you in these is that you find these people relatable. And if you like to learn through explainer videos like the one we just played, I've got dozens of these types of videos like the one that you just listened to. A lot of them are 3 to 4 minutes in length. So if there's a topic of particular interest to you, you can check out where that video came from, which are all at our Get Rich Education YouTube channel. And the topics are typically about real estate investing, wealth mindset, or sometimes economics. Those are really the 3 main themes. Check those out at Get Rich Education's YouTube channel. Devoted show listener Andrew Stanton straight ahead on Get Rich Education.
Are you on track to achieve your financial goals? Income-producing real estate is the most historically proven way to accumulate wealth and has created more financial freedom than any other means. Norada Real Estate provides everything you need to invest in the best turnkey cash flow rental properties. Our simple, proven system will help you create real wealth and passive monthly income. Get your free strategy session with our knowledgeable investment counselors at noradarealestate.com. That's NORADA realestate.com.
Countless property investors get killed with maintenance costs, but that's far less likely when you buy brand new construction. Let me tell you about JWB Real Estate Capital in Jacksonville, Florida. They pioneered the build-to-rent model where you can invest in new construction turnkey rental properties. That's why JWB was featured on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. To learn more and see inventory, go to newconstructionturnkey.com.
Hi, this is Rich Dad Advisor Garrett Sutton. You're listening to the always valuable Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold. Don't quit your daydream.
I met today's guest in St. Petersburg, Florida. He came along a few months ago for our Get Rich Education Tampa real estate field trip. He flew in from Florida with his father. In fact, he's an attendee that I just found particularly bright-eyed and attentive. And from talking to this person, I could tell that he'd listened to the show and he had listened to some episodes multiple times. I could tell because it seemed like he seemed to remember me saying some things even better than I remembered. And he describes himself as a Bible-believing Christian, a husband, a father of 5. He's an embedded software engineer, and now he describes himself as well as a real estate investor, and he is born and raised in sunny San Diego, California. He graduated from the University of California at San Diego in 2012 with a degree in computer engineering, and he enjoys family time, serving in church, flying, mountain biking, hiking, playing piano, computer programming, and most recently, real estate investing. So he's really engaged and involved in life and into a lot of different things. I'd like to welcome onto the show Get Rich Education listener, Andrew Stanton.
Thank you so much for having me, Keith. It's really an honor.
But so good to have you here. Well, I talked a bit about your background and your family and your career, but just tell us more about that.
Growing up, I followed a pretty common path. Grew up in San Diego. I hated school when I was young.
Me too.
So my mom and dad ended up homeschooling me from 4th grade on.
I just like school as well, even into high school. And now I own a platform with the word education in it. And I know that after college, you basically got on a path where what I'll say is you grew up awfully fast.
Yeah. So 2012, I graduated in June and I met my lovely, beautiful wife, Analea, near the same time as I was getting ready to graduate. I was starting to see her a little bit more. By December of 2012, we were married. By January of 2013, we were expecting our first. And then I bought a house in 2013 and a car in 2013. So all within a year, I did 4 out of the 5 biggest things you could do. I didn't switch my job. That was the only thing.
Yeah, wow. Now, and financially, you were able to do this with some stability because you did transition into that job right out of college and even during college.
Yeah, and engineering is at least in San Diego, it pays pretty well. And my dad's actually an engineer, so I grew up engineering things with him and just always really enjoyed that. And in San Diego, it pays pretty well. But I'll tell you one thing, I was making a lot, but I was also spending a lot. I was basically spending everything we were making and not really living high and mighty, just a family, standard family things. I thought I was doing what I was supposed to do.
Andrew and I went on to have a great chat, though it was lengthy. So shortly after graduating college in 2012, he'd work a full-time computer engineering job where he had both a strong income and a similarly strong amount of expenses too. He had a 40-minute commute. And yes, you've always got to double your commute time, as that's 1 hour and 20 minutes of daily round-trip driving. And Andrew figured that he was spending 11 hours a day away from his family. So after a few years, he was interested in ideas so that he could start making some stream of money without strictly having to trade his time for it, or really even seeing if this was plausible or possible. Some people don't believe that such a thing exists. Along the way, he paid off about $20,000 in student loan debt that he had from the University of California, San Diego. His student loan interest rate was 5.5%, and the reason that he paid it off is that it was the highest interest rate debt that he had. His home had a mortgage interest rate of 3.875%, and his car loan rate was 2.5%. And of course, yeah, that is the conventional wisdom, and it's not flat out awful advice to retire your highest interest rate debt. Also, you can't outsource your college debt to someone else like you can outsource your mortgage debt to tenants. Then college debt really is also one of the few debt types that just always hangs around with you because it cannot be written off in bankruptcy. But see, when he paid that off, he didn't really know about real estate investing yet and creating arbitrage and thinking about opportunity cost before retiring 5.5% interest rate debt. Andrew's real turning point came when he stumbled onto that seemingly ubiquitous little purple book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And whether it's through that book or not, so many people, like the listeners here, they get that moment of financial enlightenment and learn that living below your means is lame. When you think about how you could have been expanding your means, in that life and investing isn't about deferring the good stuff until you reach some traditional retirement age, and instead it's about seizing both your present and your future by creating cash flow right now. So with this new mindset, Andrew learned to not build a budget, but rather structure your financial statement, construct something here, be constructive, build a cash flow statement. Because you see, budgets, they chiefly show you how to slash expenses. A cash flow statement shows you how to create income, and assets, they should be considered the things that pay you every month, whether you're involved or not. That's what an asset is. And he, like most people, learned that he didn't then own any assets, none. And I once had this same epiphany in my own life. An asset is what pays you with or without your involvement. And I learned that at one point in my life, more than 15 years ago, that I didn't have any assets at that time. A smart calculation for you to make is what you can do is take your residual cash flow and divide it by your net worth. That right there, that will tell you how efficient you're being with your investments. So Andrew just learned about this a couple years ago, the beginning of 2018. It's learning really that life's biggest risk could very well be not taking one at all. It's kind of like my friend Dave Zook so terrifically articulates, either you can be conventional or you can be wealthy, pick one. Well, getting back to Andrew Stanton here, it was only a matter of weeks after he began learning about cash flow investing that one day his day job employer, Texas Instruments, called him and a bunch of other employees into a room to make an announcement. The announcement was that they were going to close their San Diego office. They were going to consolidate operations into other locations. And yes, Andrew just realized that he was laid off. He lost his job. And when he called his wife and said, "Honey, I just lost my job," she didn't believe him at first. She thought he was kidding, but it was not a joke. They've got 5 kids, a mortgage payment, car payments, and all of life's other expenses. And Andrew was a victim of all this corporate consolidation that we're seeing across all these industries, hospitals and banking and retail. Now, at this point, Andrew considers he could either uproot his entire life and family and move to one of TI's other offices outside his home area. But we talk about what is risk and what isn't risk here. And don't you think it's risky to have only one source of income? So I think that became pretty clarifying for Andrew at this point. Having just one source of income is really risky. Now, luckily, Andrew's now former employer offered him an excellent severance package. So rather than panic, he spent some of his time learning more about creating residual income, especially with real estate. And then sometime later on, he started a new job. In fact, he'd even leave some of the severance pay on the table. And one reason that he started a new job sooner is because mortgage lenders, they like to see you have some W-2 income. Mortgage lenders are more willing to make loans when you have a steady job and income. And yes, maybe you're thinking that's an unfortunate fact for you, but a day job is not always a must. I haven't had a W-2 job for years, and I'm still qualifying for loans. Now, interestingly, one tactic Andrew tried was house hacking by converting his home's garage into a rental. He had materials, and he and someone else began converting his garage into rental living quarters themselves to save money from having to hire contractors. He had also looked at some other options like adding a granny flat. This is a popular thing to do in Southern California, adding the ADU, accessory dwelling unit, which is like a smaller structure added onto the lot that you already live on, like a standalone mother-in-law place. Some people also advised Andrew not to get this add-on use permitted because when you go to get the permit, there's all of this regulatory red tape that you need to comply with. So while he was wrestling with doing the right thing here, Andrew listened to this very show during the garage conversion, and he basically soon asked himself the question, am I just trading my time for dollars again? And there's this whole, to get the permit or not to get the permit thing that didn't leave a good taste in his mouth because Andrew is a do the right thing kind of guy. Then there's the realization he had that at least for other rentals in coastal California, the numbers are just not in your favor anyway. They're too expensively priced relative to the small amount of income that they generate. Rent-to-value ratios are 0.4 to 0.5% there, generally around San Diego. That even after buying some of the materials and beginning the work on the garage conversion, he decided to give it up. He cut his losses because he was now getting some better ideas. And of course, this isn't even to mention that California's landlord-tenant laws favor the tenant, not the landlord. What Andrew has done now is that with the accumulated equity in his home that he and his wife and 5 children live inside, is that they originated a $79,000 HELOC a year or two ago. So yes, removing money from your home That act is outright blasphemy within conventional finance circles. But when you know specifically what you're doing, and that starts with knowing that your HELOC interest rate should be lower than the cash-on-cash return that you expect to generate from the rental property that you purchase with those HELOC funds, you are then dollars ahead. You've got better leverage, and you're getting other people's money to work for you. Andrew particularly liked when I had Chris Martinson on the show here, episode 175, when we talked really holistically about what wealth is. It's 8 forms of capital that you have in your life: financial capital, social capital, material, living, emotional, knowledge, cultural, and finally, time capital. Then Andrew started chatting with a few of the income property providers at the same place where I buy my properties from. It's publicly out there for anyone at GREturnkey.com. Teach a man to fish or give a man a fish? Well, why not do both? We're giving you a fish at GRE Turnkey. And Andrew currently owns one property with our Birmingham, Alabama provider there. And he's got a second income property under contract there in Birmingham. Other things that Andrew told me that have really resonated with him is how most real estate investors think about the property first, but he now realizes that the mindset, market, and team are all more important than the property. Also, the fact that the return from home equity is always zero has been a really strong motivator, as has my, signature sign-off. He told me, "Don't quit your daydream" is something that really motivates him. By the way, I recently had that phrase officially trademarked, "Don't quit your daydream," by the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. That was kind of cool. It's the first time I went through that process. And there was so much legalese there that I just hired a patent attorney to make it easy for me. But getting back to listener Andrew Stanton, one takeaway that he had from listening is that, like I say, everyone is an investor, whether they're intentional or mindful of that fact or not. And that's because you are always investing your time. If you're saying yes to something in life, anything in life, then that means that you're saying no to something else. Even if you're sleeping, you've said yes to investing in sleep and no to something else. And that's where employment cost and opportunity costs come into play. What has Andrew done most recently? He has sold his home, and he and his family are now renting in San Diego. Now, if you're a new listener, that might sound really odd to you, but he won't let himself be exploited by the disadvantageous rent-to-value ratio in San Diego. See, the rent-to-value ratio is bad on the coasts if you're an investor-owner, but it's good if you're a renter. That's a really good deal for renters. And like I've said before, paying rent is not the same as throwing money away. That really resonated with him. That is a farce that's been perpetuated by special interest groups. Look, when you pay $500 to Delta Airlines to fly on a plane across the country for 6 hours, we never said that was throwing money away, and you got to use that plane seat for much less time than you live in a home. In either case, paying rent or buying a flight ticket, you receive the benefit of using that item. Also, upon the sale of his home to go become a renter, he got a really nice wad of cash. And next, with this cash, he said he either wants to invest in more education or in more property, which would be his third rental property. So it's interesting to see what finance and abundance concepts resonate with different people. Sorry that we couldn't air the entire episode, but if you want to reach out to Andrew, his email address is in the show notes. He's a friendly guy. Coming up on the show here in the near future, what about self-management of property rather than professional management? A traditional financial advisor that even says stocks aren't the place to be, yet he invests in real estate while advising others about investing in stocks. Plus the return of Tom Wheelwright. It's going to be Weinhold and Wheelwright on 401ks and the real estate professional designation. Hey, big thanks to Get Rich Education listener Andrew Stanton today. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold, and I'll be back next week to help you build your wealth. Don't quit your daydream.
Nothing Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.
The preceding program was brought to you by your home for wealth building, GetRichEducation.com.